Welcome, everyone. This is Jonathan Litt from the Big Apple Film Festival. We are on day 2 of our conferences, and we are talking film financing, production, distribution, screenwriting, agents, and more. Today, we're focusing on the area of distribution, and we are fortunate to have Josh Nadler from Sony Pictures, AFFIRM Films. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Hi, Josh.
Hello there.
Thanks
Hi,
for being
everyone. Thanks for having me.
All right, definitely. So we have with us a member of our Big Apple Film Festival team, Ann Knerr. Hello, Ann. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to hand this over to Ann now, and we're going to chat film distribution. All right. And we'll see you in about 45 minutes.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming today. We appreciate it. We're honored to have Josh here today. And I just want to give you a little background. Josh is the Director of Development and Acquisition at Sony Pictures Entertainment, AFFIRM Films. He started in TV and film production, and then moved over to creative development. During the past 13 years, Josh has helped build Sony's faith-based division, AFFIRM Films. Well, thank you very much for being here, Josh. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Josh, I was wondering if you can get in a little bit more about your background and tell us how you got your start.
Well, came out here in the mid-2000s, found myself taking whatever work I could get, which was a lot of working on set and PAing, and started to work my way up on the production side, and knew very quickly it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It's long hours.
Yes.
And everyone on the creative development side looked like they were having a lot of fun reading scripts and giving notes and, making movies with the filmmakers more directly. So I stumbled into Sony at the right place, right time, with this little new division called AFFIRM Films. Right. And they just started looking for material and finished movies, all sorts of stuff. And I was down the hall from them on a consulting gig and asked if they needed help, and they said yes. Over that next year, I kind of just didn't screw it up and stuck around and did good work and became their development exec, and just sort of slowly rose to the ranks this past decade. And I'm still here, still at Sony, and it's a blast.
Great, that's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. First, I want to tell everybody watching, if they want to have a question for Josh, if they could type their questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get as many as we can answered today on this one. Josh, I want to start off by asking you, how do you see the future of the market for faith-based films?
Well, I think it's, I think whether it's faith-based films or any film, I think it's all sort of tied together. You could think of faith-based films as like its own genre. Mm-hmm. That's sort of on a spectrum. You have sort of the broader inspirational movies like The Blind Side, or movies that we've done like Soul Surfer and Heaven is for Real and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And then you have this sort of smaller, more overtly faith movies done for smaller budgets, done for made to be marketed directly to a core faith audience rather than a broader audience. And, like any movie that needs sort of a specialized marketing, it needs a different distribution plan and a marketing plan as opposed to the broader movies that studios tend to do. And so we sort of work in both. And I guess the big question, or the big two questions that studios and distributors are always figuring out is what makes a movie theatrical, or, and what makes something that makes sense to be on streaming. And I think whether it's a faith movie or another kind of movie, the answer is similar in that it's usually, as consumers, we're able to kind of look at a trailer or look at a poster, and we kind of know when something is meant to be in theaters, meant to be kind of an eventized, big opening weekend kind of vehicle, and movies that kind of end up on the streaming platforms and and as consumers, we kind of are able, we're starting to figure out the difference. And that's something that studios are figuring out, I think, along with consumers, is going, what do we do with these movies that we make? And it comes down to, as probably everyone knows, the marketing spend, what we used to call the P&A spend, tends to be a very big part of the budget of putting a movie out. You have the production budget. And so when you make a Marvel movie for, 300 million, it behooves the distributor to put it out wide in theaters and spend another couple $100 million on marketing, right, globally. When you make a movie for 10 million, or even 15 or 20, 10, 15 years ago, a studio would have been like, man, a $20 million movie is still a significant amount of money to make a movie. We're going to, double down on marketing it and putting it wide in theaters, but, and spending, twice, sometimes 3 times as much, to release a movie theatrically. Now with a movie of that budget, which is a more modestly budgeted movie from a studio standpoint, it might not go to theaters. The studios have, are able to kind of look at their streaming platform, look at all these other avenues and decide, maybe we don't want to spend the significant P&A spend and, triple our costs. Maybe it works better as a streaming movie. And so that is sort of the same issues and questions when we're making our sort of faith genre movies at the studio, as all of our other, brothers and sisters departments at the other divisions are also asking those same questions.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you kind of hit on what I was going to ask next, is how do you see the theatrical, coming back now that, during the pandemic, of course, streaming was really, really great. That's what everybody could watch. Now the theaters are opening back up again. We're having the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York City, going live, and many others are starting to do that. So how do you see, you touched about maybe a bigger budget would go to the theaters versus a smaller one, or how would you explain that?
Yeah, a studio, when they're making something that, we would call like a tentpole movie, with just budgets that are so out of our realm of like 300 million, like that, it just stops sounding like real money after a while, right? It's just like, this is huge. And so you're going to spend, a significant amount to put it out there to get as much out of the release strategy as possible. And usually that's a theatrical release strategy. Consumers, buying tickets and over the course of, 2 to 3 months, I guess. But I think, I'm sorry, what was your question originally?
Well, originally I was just asking, how do you see the theatrical, the theaters coming back,
right.
And what's going to be screening in them?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of what we saw before the pandemic, which was all these streaming services, whether they're own vertically integrated at studios, or they're coming in from another, part of the West Coast, like with Netflix and Prime, and I think what's great is that there's just a platform for more content. And so I think you're going to see just, the intentionality behind, spending the marketing budget on a theatrical or not, and just like deciding from the get-go, is this going to be something we're putting on the streaming service, or we're going to release, on 3,000 screens. And what's interesting is that the budgets for these bigger what we used to call blockbusters, big, sci-fi action, mm-hmm. big actors, the companies now are looking at these projects and not necessarily seeing them as obvious theatrical vehicles. They're going, listen, like, we're putting a lot of investment into our streaming services. We want more eyeballs. Let's put some of these, let's premiere some of these on the platforms.
Right.
And then of course, we have the hindsight of these last 2 weekends as things have really been opening up even more. And you look at like A Quiet Place 2 and how well that's done in theaters. And so there's a clear appetite, from us, from consumers to get back to the theaters if it's something that feels like we want to see in theaters. Like some movies, just that it's going to be funner when you're sitting in a big dark room with some other people. Not necessarily a lot of people at this point, but right now it's a handful of other people in the room with you. But so it's hard to replicate that in your living room. But I think it's just going to be more of that as studios and distributors are looking at material and movies and figuring out what feels like a great experience to have at the movie theater, as opposed to, as consumers, we're like, oh, well, I'll wait for that one to hit my TV. I don't need to go to the theater to see that. Yeah.
Right. That's true. I want to take a question from Mark. Mark says, do you feel that networking, even virtually, because of how we are living now due to the pandemic, with always be the best way of getting your material out there?
It's definitely a part, what was and is still a part of how we connect and do business, right? A lot of what I do is talking to filmmakers, talking to producers and agents and managers, looking for material, hearing pitches. And for the past 18 months, a lot of it has been over Zoom, and I think that's going to continue, for the short-term future. I think the other question that's kind of attached to that I hear a lot from people that don't live in Los Angeles is, hey, do I have to move to LA to do this? Especially now that we're doing so much on video, can I just stay in my town or my city and work from there? And I think that it's still very difficult to not have not be established and to try and get established. I think there's always going to be something to moving to whatever industry you want to be in where that is really robust. And obviously in Los Angeles, it's the entertainment industry, and coming out here and connecting with people and meeting people. And that's starting to happen again. This week I was at this fun little event that a friend put on. Sort of, it's like a networking event, but it's way more low key than that. But everyone I'm talking to, they're all starting to do the thing where you are going to lunch and taking clients at lunch and meeting. We're all starting to get back out there. And so to the question, yes, I think there's going to be a continuation of meetings done on Zoom, but the connecting and the making friends in this industry, all of that, those kind of relationships that there really is. It's hard to beat being in the city, that you want to do that in, and I think it's a part of the trial by fire of the people that are looking to get in or break in, is to really decide, I'm going to move to New York or LA, and do this. Or if it's production, Atlanta, I don't know, like there's a lot of other cities doing production, but as far as like the creative side, most of it is still done in Los Angeles, and of course New York to a certain extent. And it's a part of like the coming of age of ourselves, right? Like I came out here without any prospects and but some friends that were in the industry, right? And you just sort of make your way. Like I waited tables the first 2 years I was here while slowly getting film work, and it's just sort of a part of it. So not to say that has to be done, that's the way it has to be done, but it's hard to replicate the personal relationships, if you haven't established those already, if you're not living in that city, because things are opening up again. You know, like there definitely was a pause for like, you know, the past year, but things are opening up, and we don't know where it's going, but we hope it's a continuation of coming back to doing an incredible amount of business, getting as many people as we can back to work and doing the things we love to do.
Now, how does a new filmmaker get their work? Or, you know, I know they're new and they might not have that many connections. So maybe, what type of work do you see? Do they have to go through agents or managers, and then they come to you? Or, you know, I know cold call is not really productive, but you know, how does that work for you?
I think it's you know, that it's a question as old as time, right? It's the question I had on my mind, you know, when I first came out here, for sure. It's understandable, and I think the thing we got to keep coming back to is that, like, specifically for writers, no one's stopping you from writing, right? Like, you could always do that, and for filmmakers, like directors, producers, no one's stopping you from making content. When we're, you know, so you could make things, short films, micro budget films, and try to break through that way. You could write scripts to break through that way. You know, like the internet, which is a very broad way of just saying there are communities and places online that whose business it is, like a lot of it's pay to play, but it's like whose business it is to like give notes, to connect, to sort of shine a light on projects. If you're in like the top 3, you know, whatever, to agents and managers, you know, and there's a lot of wariness from our standpoint in the industry about all these sort of like shops that have popped up that have kind of, that allow this, right? And you kind of have to do your due diligence as to like what makes sense and what doesn't. But what I think you'll find is that, like, you also want to find community that allows you to develop and incubate a bit. And in LA, that is sort of a part of our, it's a given. Like, you come to LA, you meet people that are at your level, and you rise up together, and you get better together, whatever it is you're doing. In other cities, it might be more difficult to do that, but you got to find your people and make stuff, and, you know, whatever that is. And eventually, if your stuff kind of breaks through, you know, you'll have representation, you know, reaching out and saying, hey, like, this is pretty good. Let's talk. And so it really is that, because as, you know, working at a studio or a production company, you know, development execs rely on producers, agents, and managers, and other production companies to bring each other material. Usually it means that material has been like vetted and developed to a certain point where it's just ready to look at and have a clear yes or no about whether it would work for us. And so when you're talking about cold calling, and it's more of like, is your stuff ready? Have you been doing the work? Have you been developing yourself in whatever craft you're pursuing, where, you know, when you make that connection with someone that could take a look at your work, that you're ready? Because it's like, here's the thing, meeting people, connecting with people like me, especially if you live in the city or New York or something, it's not that hard. You're gonna eventually meet all of us if you're nice and you're hanging out. Like, that's not the thing. It's the hard part is developing yourself in whatever craft you want to focus on, and stepping into then getting paid to do what you love, which is always the hard part.
Yeah.
And that just comes with time. And it's a, you know, like the cliche of it's a marathon, not a sprint, and all that. So like, agents and managers, if they start to show interest in your work, it's usually a pretty good barometer of, okay, like, it's time to start talking to the people out here that are are like, you know, developing projects and making movies. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, it touched upon, you know, there's film festivals have, like Sundance has a lab, you know, has the labs and stuff like that, where they, you know, get together and help filmmakers. I know, I think there's one out in LA, and other film festivals have that. So, you know, that's a good tool people use. And also
and producers, and producers as well. Producers are looking for material, and they're looking for material that they can get made, right? That's a producer's job, is to not just, you know, make a movie, but find material that gets set up at a place that could fund and, you know, possibly distribute. And so if a producer is interested in your work, you know, like an agent or manager, that is a good sign that you have been getting better at whatever it is you're doing, and you're ready to meet more, to show this work to more people, you know?
Yeah. I want to take a question from Connie. Connie says, where is AFFIRM with TV series development? Where will they be distributed?
So AFFIRM, you know, is a division of Sony, and it's a great question, by the way, because I have an answer. It's a division of Sony, and we've been doing, you know, basically a few movies a year. You know, hopefully that's what we try to do. And they're all big theatrical releases. Those are hard to do a volume business of, right? Obviously TV, and what we call TV is like, you know, it could be anything. It's a limited series on Netflix. It's a, you know, it's the thing that's been on CBS for 20 years, right? It's all TV now, right? So AFFIRM this past year, or over the course of this last year, has brought on a TV exec to start developing, looking for and developing pitches. The thing about Sony is that we're really the only studio that doesn't have a like, you know, the network side, the cable cable side, like the American, you know, channels, right? Like, we're a Japanese-owned company. It's this thing where, like, we're not allowed to own networks in the US.
Oh.
And so Sony, even though Sony has this amazing storied track record of, you know, some of the most like beloved TV shows, you know, between Seinfeld and Breaking Bad and Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune are, like, you know, some of our staples, right? Like, these are like the things we still work with distributors to, you know, we still need like a you know, like a FX or a Netflix or something to come along and put our stuff out there, you know, in the US. All that to say that AFFIRM has also acquired a Christian streaming platform called PureFlix, and we're also now looking at lower budgeted material, like more like core Christian material that could be done on a lower budget, both in feature length and in on the TV side, TV episodes. But our TV exec, who is looking for stuff for AFFIRM, is still at the Sony TV division. So she reports both to the heads of Sony TV and to my boss, Rich. And so it's sort of this this slow process of finding material that could work. As we all know, TV is kind of needs a wider audience from the get-go, especially for, you know, a lot of these shows just feel inherently wide. These aren't like art house movies, you know, or something. So it's like trying to find that material that can work for the AFFIRM brand or AFFIRM label, the AFFIRM audience, and also kind of a wider audience that works as a TV show. And so our exec is working very hard on putting together and going out to the town with TV pitches. And for people that may not know, like, and you know, because I don't come from TV, I come from the feature side. Like, what you realize, it's the key to a TV package is the creator, usually the showrunner. You know, like a showrunner is very important. It's really, when you're bringing a TV pitch out, a key component is usually we have the person here that's going to get this thing, to get like deliver these 10 episodes because they've done this before. They have that experience. It's not enough to have a TV idea. Here's the other thing. There's plenty of ideas out there. We're not starved for ideas. Between all of the IP and all of the people that have been living in this town for decades, a lot of them are even coming from the feature side and now making TV because there's so much more places to go with TV content. We don't need ideas. What we need are people that know what they're doing from a showrunner standpoint or a creator standpoint. And then from the other end of that spectrum, if you want to write for TV and you have no experience or no credits, the way you do that, not that there's only one way, but the generalized way to do that is to start get in at the bottom level as in a writer's room. Usually you might even be like the writer's PA or the writer's coordinator. You might not even be a writer yet, like technically, right? And then because TV is a lot more open in terms of taking unseasoned people, if they have a voice, if they have a spec writing sample that captures their imagination, the reader, and go, oh man, this person can write. We bring them in on the ground floor and they'll learn how a TV show is made, by being the lowest person on the totem or whatever, right? And so those are sort of the two ends of the spectrum. There are the projects getting made in TV that are usually coming in by people that have credits, that are creating a really potent package, whether that's a showrunner or an actor attached, or IP. And then there's the other end of people trying to break in, and there's so many places, there's so many TV shows and so many opportunities now to get your foot in the door of these TV shows, of these writer rooms, and learn as you go. On the feature side, it's a lot different. When we hire a writer to adapt a book we've optioned, we just need a person that's done this before and that does it well. We don't want someone we want someone with the experience, because we're paying a lot of money to do this, and we need them to get as close to knocking it out of the park as quickly as possible in those drafts. We're not here for them to learn as they go. It's different on the feature side. I hope, sorry to ramble, but I hope that sort of gives a better picture of things.
No, and that kind of explains what you're saying. The meaning of the showrunner is the person that has experience and has done it before in the TV, sector, and can bring it to you. And also you mentioned IP, which I think most people know, but if you want to explain that a little bit.
It could be anything, right? Usually it's a book or a comic. A lot of them are like old TV shows or movies that we're just remaking. Either, sometimes we'll take an old movie and turn it into a TV show, or vice versa. And it just is, it's both obvious, and it's both kind of like the thing we all like roll our eyes at as consumers and filmmakers, right? Like, we want the, like the new Lord of the Rings TV show, which is apparently one of the most expensive TV shows to date, right? It's, we go, oh man, we have the movies, why, but it's like, yeah, like it becomes this sort of destination viewing because of its brand. And so it's hard to then look at something that feels like a similar world building experience in a spec pilot or a 2-hour, 3-hour spec script that has elves and orcs, and then you're just like, okay, but we already had that, we can make it again, off the strength of the brand. So it becomes this it's hard, right? It's not it's not the thing we want to hear, but it's the thing, you know, it's like, it is that, I think when we're talking about bigger budgets, big vehicles, it's easier for distributors and studios to see an IP and go, okay, there's a clear bucket and it kind of works as, you know, as a, what it was as a graphic novel. Maybe we can make it work as a movie or a TV show. I think the thing we have to think about now that's exciting for me as a consumer is the immersive experience these sort of limited series and TV shows allow, because the budgets are bigger, and they're taking on these IPs that maybe 30 years ago we would have tried to make as a movie. And we all know, like, sometimes movies don't work because they just try to do too much with the IP, with the story in its original form. Movies are on some level very simple ideas, right? Like everyone's like, one of the greatest action movies in recent memory is Mad Max Fury Road, right? I saw it 5 times in the theater. I was blown away. That is a simple idea. That is about as simple of an idea as you could get, right? So what's so great about the TV landscape, and that I'm including movies, I'm including like doing sequels and, in streaming, is that you're able to take some of these IPs like books and comics and match the immersiveness of the world. And so, like, a great example of that is The Queen's Gambit. It's based on a novel that came out in like the early to mid 80s, and it was kind of a hit as a novel. And of course, like, the studio, a producer or studio is like, let's try and develop this as a movie, right? And you think about the hit it became on Netflix as a limited series, and because it was an immersive take on the novel, which is in itself an immersive experience. When you read a novel, you are consumed by that novel, and it's hard for a movie to consume you because movies need to be a lot more simpler in its idea. When you're able to draw the story out over 8 episodes, it has that same immersive quality. And if you think about if The Queen's Gambit got made as a hour-and-a-half movie, and it came out these last few years as like an hour-and-a-half movie, I don't know if we would have been talking about it or watching it or raving about it in the same way as it sort of became this 8-hour, I think it was 8 episodes, I can't remember, but this immersive journey, right? We're binging it or watching it over the course of a weekend. And so that becomes, like, I think one of the upsides is there's all these cool books out there that felt really hard to adapt as movie ideas because they just felt too expansive and too, all those things that are why we read books and why they don't work as movies a lot of the time. But now, you have these platforms and distributors that are wanting to create these experiences, wanting to spend the money and try to translate these IPs into like these more immersive experiences and multi-episode journeys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I have a question I want to take from Mark. He's asking, what's the best way to get your feature script to producers after recognition from a festival?
It's networking. I think it's a lot of research on your part. So, like, you could go on IMDb. Specifically, I would recommend IMDb Pro. It's like a manageable monthly fee or yearly fee. And if you have something that is starting to get positive feedback and people are going, in the industry going, oh, this is like pretty good, dude. Like, wow, you can like look up like which producers are making the kind of movie you've written, and it's like, and look up those production companies and really be intentional about who you're sending your stuff out to. you know, and emailing is not, it's not a threatening thing if your email is concise and clear in what it is and what you want, you know, and it's like, and why you think it's a fit for the person you're sending it to, right? So it's like, calling is weird, you know, like if you think about your own personal life, how we don't even want to get calls from our friends, like just text me, right? You know, and so like, you know, when I'm in my office and my phone rings, you know, my office phone, my landline, and I pick it up and I have no idea who's on the other line. The person's calling me. It's just like, okay, you're in Nebraska. You know, you wrote this. It's just like, it's tough because I don't know, like, that can't happen all the time, right? But like an email is like something that people are able to respond to some degree. And if you've done your research and you're like, I wrote this, I think this producer will like it, I think it's up their alley, I'm gonna reach out to them, you know, do it. But I think that's what's so, what is crucial, especially if you don't have, if you're not established, if you're able to get a manager or agent, you know, it's their job to sit with you when your script's ready to go out and be like, all right, like, you strategize, you go, here are the 10 producers or 10 production companies we think we want to send this to. And then they go reach out to these people, you know, and that's a part of our ecosystem here. Just it's a part of what we're used to. Is just like, you know, my relationships, I get these emails or calls from agents and managers going, hey, like, I have this project, we think it's for you. And I know that like, that means that script maybe went through a couple of rewrites and the agent's like, this is ready to go. And now let's call Josh.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. I have a question. There's, what are some of the, should filmmakers be preparing for distribution prior to production?
Yes. You know, it's a tiny, or it's a miracle, tiny or big, however you want to size it up. It's even at a studio, when a movie I've been developing for years, when we're finally on set, like, you know, rolling cameras, it still feels like a miracle. And I work at a studio. It's hard to get movies made, right? So like,
Yeah.
and you know, at a studio level, whatever we're making, we've thought very hard about the distribution strategy on the, you know, on the other end when it's made. But we need producers and filmmakers, directors, and even writers to think about this too. It's like, you know, like it's sort of like thinking about where this can live, right? There's the difference between, you think about horror movies, and there's the difference between a horror movie that you can make for $500,000 that still feels like a good movie that maybe could even get a theatrical release, right? Like, hey, like that's happened before. The first Insidious movie was about a $1 million budget, and it became a huge franchise, right? So, but then there are other horror movies being made for 12 million, right? And so then you start to go, okay, like, which one am I writing towards as a writer? Which one am I producing as a producer? If you're making a $10 million movie independently, you better be sure you know how to get your money back, because that's a lot of money to get your money back on.
Yeah.
And so you gotta sort of have a realistic conversation about the life of this movie afterwards, if it's made well enough. You know, it's like, we all, you know, I think a lot of us we're all old enough to we all were kind of still raised in the theatrical experience. It's why a lot of us fell in love with movie making, is that experience. And we all want our movies to be delivered to the audience, you know, in the theatrical setting, because that's how we grew up. But you have to be realistic about whatever story you're telling. Is this something that is going to live in the theatrical setting or not? And have those hard conversations. And all that's not always decided at the beginning, but a lot of it's just like making sure you're making something at a budget, getting the tax breaks, talking to there's, outside of the US, there's a whole world called international sales. And a lot of producers and financiers are putting together movies based on what they know from the genre and cast, what they could get out of the international side. And that mitigates the risk on what the budget is and how much they could maybe get out of the domestic side, and not desperately need, the big sale from Netflix to cover them, right? If you're banking on a distributor, cutting you a huge check once they've seen your movie to get out of your investment, that is a very high risk thing. A lot of producers and financiers put together these movies mitigating the risk through the tax breaks of wherever they're shooting the movie, and what they know they could kind of get out of the international markets based on like the genre and usually the cast.
All right. Right. Well, Josh, I want to ask you, we're winding down here, and I just wanted to ask you, what is the latest things that you're working on now that you can tell us that is in production or going out there?
Yes. It's hard. We are kind of bottlenecked right now with about 4 or 5 projects. We think 2 or 3 of them are going to go this year. We haven't announced any of them yet because we kept pushing back these production dates. But we have a big kind of boxing biopic, a sports biopic, kind of the classic, this person's life journey with sports in it that we're excited about. We can't wait to announce that one. Nice. And we have a biblical movie that hopefully we'll put together this year, with some romance and a little bit of action, and then we have what else can I talk about? And then there's a few other ones we're developing that are, from our sort of theatrical side. We're essentially in the true story business. We're looking for those inspirational true stories that can, when you like, whether it's a magazine article or a book or or a viral video, like when you see it, you go, oh, I think there's a movie there, right? And then you go, is it if we develop it and package it and put the right budget behind it, is it a theatrical, does it feel like the next Soul Surfer or Blindside or Heaven is for Real? So we have some really beautiful true human interest stories that we're developing that we hope we could get over the finish line and into production, but that might be another year off. But we have an epic sports biopic, and we have a more modestly budgeted, like biblical epic that's heavy on the romance. And we're excited about both of them.
So they can keep up to date on everything that's happening at AFFIRM, I guess, through your website.
I think so, yeah. Like, the website is very much like when things are way past, not like, just things have happened and we're putting it out. That's usually what goes on the website, right? It's a very corporate thing. The information is completely democratized. You're seeing, if you're looking at Deadline every day or every other day, you're seeing all the stuff. I'm seeing a lot of it at the same time you are. So like, but yeah, like when we do our press releases and announcements, they'll probably go out through those outlets for sure.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much, Josh, for your time today. We appreciate
you having me.
Taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And thank all the audience participants for their questions. So take care and good luck to you on everything you're doing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.